Hello and welcome to Leviathan News. Today is September 21st, and we got a bunch of people here today. We got a big round table. So we have the FX protocol team, Latin DAO guys, Kmets and Crouger, who are here to talk about the big news that came out with Convex yesterday. And then we also have 0xTutti, who is going to be telling us about JPEG'd. So welcome, everybody.
Hey,
thanks for having us, guys.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So the big news that we saw, I think it was yesterday or the day before, was that Convex is going to come out and support FXN, the upcoming token for FX protocol. That's pretty big news because Convex has not supported every single protocol that has a VE locking system. It really picks and chooses, and you guys are the next one up. That's pretty cool.
We were picked and chosen.
That's right.
The Kingmaker came. C2TP, the Kingmaker, brought his sword out, did that whole like knighting thing.
That's right. Each shoulder, one tap on each shoulder. It was like, this is a really big deal for us, obviously, as you guys know. And it's nice to get that that validation. I think Convex, they're one of the first groups to really, like kind of grok what we're after here, like what we're doing with FFX, and really kind of get excited about it. So really, we're really excited to have them on board, and they're an awesome, partner to have, right? Like when if you're looking for the best folks to, have a second set of eyes, obviously they've done a lot of diligence looking over our contracts and everything, in the process of doing, their integration. And so, great suggestions, and just it gives us a lot of extra confidence in our own work too, to have them checking it all out and double checking our work.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So for people who are unaware, Convex essentially is a liquid locker where any protocol that has a VE locking system, where essentially you lock up governance tokens for a long period of time, anywhere between like a year for something like Balancer up to 4 years for, say, Curve or Frax, or I'm not sure about Prisma. But do you guys have any information about the VE locking system that you're going to be using?
Well, our VE locking system is very similar to Curve's, and we utilize it for our other protocols as well, Concentrator and Clever. So it will operate very similarly to those, like a 4-year lock with a linear decay on it. And so right now, it's basically just going to be set up for just governance functions. But FX protocol is so flexible that and it could be utilized to vote on new tokens to be integrated into the protocol, or boosting features in some form or fashion. But right now, it's basically just a way to sort of create a governance process for the protocol, and kind of like spread out sort of that governance attack vector, because Aladdin itself, the DAO, up front via our tokenomics gets 30% of those FXN tokens, and then locks them immediately. So Aladdin DAO will always have sort of the biggest stake in FXN.
and of course we think a lot about governance, but probably the biggest aspect for holders is the revenue share aspect, right? Which, yeah. FXN has a very healthy revenue stream, and as we're deploying now, we're looking at diverting 75% of that revenue stream for distribution to VE FXN token holders. So that's kind of the main thrust. One of the things that one of the reasons we roll out this VE tokenomics is we think that, obviously there are that's a long discussion about, like, is VE tokenomics really, like, is that a good thing? Is it the best thing? But I think one of the things that it does very well, or at least as well as anything that's available, is help to align your governance with the long-term success of the protocol, right? Like that's the name of the game here, is trying to make sure there's no easy way to make a quick pump and dump from your governance side, right? You want to make sure everybody's forced to stick around for the long term, and then make decisions through that lens.
Yeah, I think the VE system has kind of proven itself at this point. I think the main question that I would have is are you guys like iterating or adding anything new? I know that Prisma had recently added a bunch of new stuff. So, I mean, this is quite a small picture here, a lot of text, but so they added a bunch of like modular governance flexibility. They added some gas optimizations. Any account can maintain multiple locks. So like locks can be withdrawn. This is one thing that has people talk about. So they're adding a rage quit fee. So like a linear rage quit fee according to how many like weeks are remaining. And then
that's very cool. I wasn't aware of that. No, we're deploying a pretty vanilla VE system. And then part of the idea here, part of the reason why the convex integration is so critical or is such a big deal for us is that we think that a lot of that type of functionality can come in at the wrapper level. Obviously not all of it, but you know, maybe it's a bit of a cop out. but generally speaking, we have this sort of affinity for keeping things as simple and battle tested as possible at the lowest level, right?
Yeah.
And especially when you're talking about like long duration locking and the sort of constraints that puts on you, I think that, you know, not that we wouldn't have considered those types of changes or without making any judgment on them, I would say that there is something to be said for keeping the core as sort of svelte as possible.
Yeah, I think there are some things. I mean, some of the things in there like are just like basic UX stuff. So Prisma's adding this like freeze feature, so you don't actually have to relock every week. You can just lock. Yeah. So like it's just small things like that, right? Like
quality of life stuff.
Yeah. Like as like one of the things is like a retail pleb is that if I'm buying CRV and locking it up, I mean the cost to relock is can be significant for me like week to week, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm not saying that I think the VE system as a whole is fine. I think there's probably just nominal improvements that can be made to help with like voting structures, like some of the issues around voting. I mean, really, it's just like contract logic that like for users, I think one of the things that I see Prisma doing is that like typically with the VE system, you have to zero out your, Garrett, maybe you can help me with this. You have to like zero out your votes first, and then you can reallocate instead of just reallocating. Is that right?
Say that again. Sorry.
So like if let's say you have all your V system delegated, right? And then you have to like clear it out. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's not so important. So, well, that's cool.
Just gotta wait.
Yeah. So that's cool. So I guess you said that Aladdin DAO will maintain a large position within the FXN structure, right?
Yeah. So that's like Kmets mentioned. That's one of the things that. So Aladdin DAO is kind of like the incubator and the builder, but the idea here is that the things that we spin up are meant to be like they're meant to kind of fly the nest at some point in time. So the idea here is that's part of the reason why we tokenize all of these products is so that the idea here is that in the long run, Aladdin becomes a sort of major shareholder, right? Like a custodian, and then obviously all of that governance for the Aladdin token allocation, which is locked in perpetuity, flows through to the Aladdin token holders, and that really helps to minimize the governance attack surface area, right? Because we're starting with Aladdin is starting with a huge head start in terms of that governance power.
Yeah. And what exactly are the votes going to be used for? Is it like new emissions, or are you going to be paying for liquidity?
So baseline is yeah, just what you expect. Things like liquidity direction and basic sort of community governance. Kmets talked about potentially onboarding different assets. The thing about FFX is a pretty powerful model. Like we've started out based in this Ethereum world and creating these two derivatives, these two ETH derivatives, but really that model can be copy pasted to a lot of different assets, right? There's a lot of kind of blue sky field or open field kind of space for us to explore here. And so in the future, I can see that also being like coming in as a governance aspect, not just in which tokens that we onboard, but also how we support their liquidity. And you can see a sort of an ecosystem of these types of derivatives all flowing through a central point of f of x. And at that point in time, f of x becomes something of an exchange, right? Because you can mint and redeem between these two tokens, right, without actually having to go through the liquidity of a DEX. So there's interesting stuff on the horizon that is still sort of not really ready to talk about and kind of that we're brewing up. But the baseline thing to think about in terms of governance is just what you think, the liquidity direction, that kind of stuff. We will be supporting liquidity, and actually we've already started. We have some secondary liquidity on Curve for both XETH and FETH, which is kind of interesting. I don't know exactly how that's going to evolve in the future, because right now FETH is really FETH is farmable on f of x through the rebalancing pool, which is how we maintain our stability. And so there's a way to earn that staked ETH right on f of x. And so we don't actually need deep secondary liquidity for the functioning, like the basic functioning of the protocol. But having that secondary liquidity helps with composability and all that kind of stuff, as you guys know very well.
Yeah. So is the liquidity more important to incentivize the FETH or the XETH? Probably the FETH, right?
Do you know what? Well, I'll tell you what's funny. You ask 10 people that question, and half of them are going to tell you one answer, and half of them will tell you the other answer.
Yeah.
Kind of funny, eh, Kmets?
Yeah, I was like just kind of like pondering that question. It's I don't even know how to answer. I mean, it's a good question. I'd have to think about it, but
it's also a lever that we can pull depending on the market condition, right? Like if we see that interest is waning on one side or the other, you can kind of help to. It's kind of yet another stability mechanism, right? Where you can kind of direct a little bit more liquidity toward the X side if you think that the natural interest in XETH is waning. But that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, and that when we were talking, we pounded the pavement a lot for this protocol, talked to a lot of different people, and half of them said, "Yo, the utility of FETH makes perfect sense, but I mean, how are you going to convince people to hold XETH in a bad market?" And then the other half of the people said, well, XETH makes perfect sense. I'd always buy that, but how are you going to convince people to hold FETH?
Yeah.
Well, two things. I mean, if there's a money market for XETH, I think people would hold it and lend it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people will always want some sort of like stable exposure during bull markets, right? Even though it may not like seem the most optimal, people always want to have some cash that they can deploy, right?
Yeah, and that's sure. You're right about that, and that's just that's what we've seen, and obviously the market hasn't been amazing over the last few weeks any more than it has been for months before that. But the breakdown, like the interest in XETH is more than sufficient to keep the protocol running happily. It's actually even higher than I expected, right? And then the thing is that every time you get a drop in the price of ETH, you get a huge drop in the price of XETH. Kmets wrote a cool article about how it's kind of like going back in time. Like when XETH, the price of XETH drops because it's tokenized, you can buy it after the drop at the sort of amplified loss, and it just makes for a pretty compelling purchase.
Yeah. So like right now, if you're buying XETH, the implicit leverage that you're getting is 3.3. Seems pretty good.
Yeah, and that's at the kind of at the high end. Like we typically we run up as far as 4x during what we call like normal operations, right? Before we start to try to edge the get a little bit more XETH minted. But yeah, that's and I think that's what happens. I mean, every time the XETH fraction drops a bit, that implied leverage that you get, it gets even more attractive, and without any kind of funding cost, it's pretty easy to just snap a little bit up, particularly if you've got a long time horizon and you can sit on it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that goes along with that is, as I said in the article, is like the as the price of ETH drops, your purchasing power over XETH increases. So it's almost it like gives you a larger bang for your buck, if you're an ETH bull. So and then when the price starts to recover, hopefully, cross your fingers, then the increased leverage also helps it recover faster. So
what would the implicit? Do you know around what the implicit price that you'd be buying XETH at right now?
it should be it's like 66 cents a token.
Yeah.
Well, it's I'm not sure that you can.
Well, I mean, I was just referring back to that
Kmets' time travel idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your
in
time
terms
travel,
of
yeah.
what it would be in ETH terms, I'd have to, that actually, I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, that'd be like a cool community booster project, is to build a website that showed
like a calculator.
that showed like sort of like what the virtual price, like if you were to buy XETH at this leverage and at
You
this
spun
price.
up an example in your article, though, didn't you?
I did, yeah. It basically, at the time that I wrote the article, the price of ETH was about like 1650 or something like that. And if there had been a 20% drop in the price of ETH, then the equivalent price of XETH would drop by something like 68%, which would be equivalent to going back to December 2020 and buying ETH, in terms of purchasing power.
So kind of an extreme example.
Yeah. Well, but what's interesting about that is with that example, and at the system parameters at that time, none of the stability mechanisms had been triggered yet. So I mean, the system was still healthy, and it allowed you to have that increased power to purchase ETH derivatives. So
okay, so we do have some people in the audience who would like a short explanation, just to go through FX or FETH and XETH again.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea is that, so we'll start it with the easy one. How do you use it? You bring ETH over, which either ETH or staked ETH. Now, behind the scenes, everything in the reserve, 100% of the reserve is staked ETH. And so that answers a question that we see as well in chat. But you can either bring your staked ETH or you can zap in ETH. And using that ETH, you will then mint either FETH or XETH. You can choose which one. You can in a combination if you want. F stands for fractional ETH. And so the idea is it's very, very, very much like a stable coin. The price of FETH goes up and down with the price of ETH, but only at 10% of the price movements. So if you bought some FETH and then the price of ETH went up by 10%, the price of your FETH would go up by 1%. And so that's like the USD net asset value of your FETH. And so if you were to turn around and redeem that FETH, you'd get 1% more in USD value in staked ETH back than you had originally put in. On the other side is the XETH. That's the leveraged ETH. X is like 2x, 3x leveraged ETH. And if you choose to mint that, then if the price of ETH goes up by, 10%, the price of your XETH is going to go up by a multiple of that. So like 20 or 30%, depending on what the implicit leverage is. Holding XETH doesn't cost anything. You don't have to pay any ongoing funding costs, which you would normally have to do if you used a perp to get leveraged. Most kinds of perps require that to get leveraged ETH exposure. And that's it. That's how you use it. You just buy and hold these tokens. FETH is, for all intents and purposes, a stable coin, though it's not pegged to a US dollar. It's pegged to ETH, but it just only moves at a very sort of compressed amplitude, like a very compressed way. And then the XETH is that leverage version. Behind the scenes, what we're doing is we're taking all that staked ETH and we're putting it into a reserve. And we're forcing the price of the fractional ETH to move at that 10% of the ETH price movements. And then we're taking all the rest of the value in the reserve and assigning it to the XETH. Hopefully this is clear. So the idea is everybody who's holding XETH is absorbing the volatility that normally would go to the FETH holders, right? XETH is like a shield that protects FETH from too much volatility in either direction. If ETH goes up a bit, then FETH stays constant and XETH goes up a lot. If ETH goes down a bit, FETH stays constant, more or less, and XETH goes down a lot, something like that.
Yeah. So, and essentially, like as the price of ETH goes down, the XETH value has to decline so that more value can go back to the FETH holders. And it's the opposite, where if the price of ETH goes up, the FETH pretty much stays relatively where it is, and all that extra value goes to XETH on the other side.
Exactly. And so the key here is that FETH and XETH are always redeemable for the staked ETH in the reserve. You can always swap your XETH and your FETH for staked ETH from the reserve, and the amount you get is determined by the net asset value, right? That's that number that's shown in the top right corner of each of those, the blue and the red box there.
Mm-hmm.
So as we change the net asset value numbers, it changes how much your token is redeemable for from the reserve, and that's how we control the price of it. So the leverage of XETH, I see another question popping up. So the leverage of XETH varies. This is kind of one of the key things about this protocol. It's the reason why you can come and you can mint either FETH or XETH as you want. There's no in general you can just kind of jump in anywhere, and in order to do that, we allow the total fraction of FETH and the total fraction of XETH to vary. Right. So there may be, if there's a lot of FETH, there'll be a smaller amount of XETH. And so they don't have to always be equal. And as the fraction of XETH compared to the fraction of FETH varies, it changes the implicit leverage of the XETH. And that kind of makes sense. So imagine, if you had a small amount of XETH that's absorbing the volatility of a large amount of FETH, then you can see it would be really high leverage, right? Because all the volatility from the big chunk of FETH is getting focused onto a small amount of XETH. And likewise, if you only had a small amount of XETH and a small amount of FETH and a ton of XETH, you can see that the volatility would be really quite low because there's not very much volatility to be absorbed from just a small supply of FETH.
Yeah.
So the protocol works when there's sort of something of a balance between the two, but it can vary quite a lot.
So like as the price goes down and down and down, the XETH ratio to FETH is going to get smaller as well too. And then if it goes below 130%, you have these people in the rebalance pool. So like what do those people actually do?
Sorry, Kmets, you should take this.
Yeah. So what this is basically a method for people that have minted FETH. They can basically deposit into the rebalance pool. And what the rebalance pool does is it takes a portion of the staked ETH emissions that are in the reserve, and it sends them to this pool. So people that are FETH holders that have deposited it in here, they can basically single-sided stake collect stETH emissions. And so right now, you're looking at about a 4.3% APR in just straight stETH emissions. And the catch is, if the collateral reserve ratio gets below 130%, then their FETH gets sent back through the system, and it's sent back into staked ETH. So they go from being FETH holders to staked ETH holders, and they're no longer collecting those emissions because you have staked ETH now. But that's basically sort of an insurance policy to keep the collateral reserve ratio at a sort of a safe level, and so. Right now, if you put it in there, it's sort of a 2-week sort of commitment, and but we're kind of looking at the system, and we think that because of the sort of the liquidity that's available elsewhere, that we might be able to change those parameters a little bit. So something to keep an eye on, but kind of a cool way to earn staked ETH by single staking your basically stable coins.
Yeah, it almost acts like the Trove system for liquidity.
Yeah,
very similar.
Totally inspired by that. And the idea is, in the same way, I mean, I think Tetranode famously used that stability pool and liquidity to DCA into cheap ETH. And I think that that's something you can use this for as well, right? Is swapping in it. And actually we've got, I mean, in terms of a minor alpha leak, we've been brewing up this idea. A lot of people we've been talking to have been looking for ways to kind of automatically deploy into XETH in the case of a price drop. And so we're thinking about rolling out a parallel rebalancing pool that, rather than redeeming your FETH just straight into staked ETH from the reserve, will actually redeem it and then mint out XETH. So go all the way from FETH, from the stable, to the leveraged XETH. And so, just something that we're cooking up that will actually be sort of like a supercharged, rather than dollar cost averaging into just ETH, you can dollar cost average into leveraged ETH in that situation.
It's pretty smart.
Yeah, it's basically limit orders.
That's very, I really like that a lot. Yeah.
Do you ever refer to it internally as XETH liquidity? A play on exit liquidity? Bad joke, ignore me.
Well, that's cool. So it's really nice to hear about all these updates that are coming for FX protocol. I might have to buy some XETH today with it being at 3.3%. Wait, I have one more question about that. So the leverage is always changing. So if I buy at 3.3% and then the leverage changes to 2, that means my leverage has also changed to 2 as well too, right?
That's right.
Correct.
Everybody gets the same leverage wherever the system is at. I mean, the key thing, and this is part of the reason we bang on about our marketing speak, we bang on about these funding costs, because is something that it took me a while to wrap my head around. But the idea of a buy and hold token that gives you that leverage, there's no like ongoing losses, right? I think we've seen some attempts at like a leveraged ETH token in the past that didn't really pan out. I think the key is that when you can confidently sit, you can take a long time horizon and still get that leverage exposure. It really changes. I think it opens up the idea of leverage to a different set of participants, if that makes sense. Like, whenever you've got funding costs to contend with, you've got to have a time horizon. So you're not making just a bet on the price change. You're making a bet on the price change and over like how quickly it's going to happen. Whereas if you tend to take, like, if you don't know what the price is going to do tomorrow, but you're pretty confident about where it's going to be in 4 years, that makes this kind of a thing a lot easier to do, because you can sit and hold it, and you're not going to hemorrhage value onto funding costs or like arbitrage losses or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, from like a risk perspective, like from a, if you're talking about it in like the options, you're essentially going long gamma, right? Because like as the you don't have to pay the funding fees, right? So there's no theta decay, but you do have this exposure to either like increasing or decreasing your leverage, which is out of your control. And so if you think about like in the run up, when you get towards like the top of the market, maybe everybody switches over to FETH. And then if you're still in XETH at the point, then your leverage actually goes up. And now any sort of like downturn, you're going to be taking more losses to cover the FETH like balances. Yeah,
that's for sure true. And we did a lot of look. Like, I mean, we tried to sort of mentally figure out, time travel a little bit and imagine how these things are going to work in all these different market conditions, right? And we looked at, what does open interest look like through some of the crazy, different market conditions we've seen in the past. The conclusion that we've come to, and obviously we're watching this very carefully as we go along, and we can use emissions and liquidity direction to help to soften any kind of, we can make XETH more attractive or FETH more attractive as we need to with directing liquidity. But really what it came down to is that there always seems to be some kind of appetite for long ETH.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. On your back testing that you did for these two assets, was there any kind of like magical leverage number where, or maybe you guys have this internally, like a magical leverage number, which kind of signifies, oh, hey, this is probably a good time to come in and look at XETH?
Well, I mean,
because it is mean reverting, right?
Well, we do have like these stability modes for the protocol, right? So when the collateral reserve ratio gets below 130%, all of our safety stability modules start to engage, like the rebalancing pool going in, and then minting and redeeming incentives change. So basically, if XETH hits the equivalent of basically a leverage level of 4, that's when all the safety stability modules kind of start to kick in. And then so as far as like what's like a healthy like expectation of sort of what this will be functioning at, we're really early on, but it's looking like it's kind of like at around like 2.5 is sort of like what we've seen normally. But at about 4, that's when all the safety modules start to kick in, and so it shouldn't get much more above 4, hopefully. So
and here's the thing: we at Aladdin are super crappy traders. Like 0% of what we are good at is trading, and so you can just look at my own personal history of buying XETH and know that I don't have any magic number that I know when it's a good time to enter, because all the XETH that I own was bought at a lower leverage and a much higher price.
We'll take that into account. Well,
so basically what you're saying is this is not financial advice, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and if it is, it's bad financial advice.
Yeah, exactly.
From me.
Well, cool. Very cool. I think the last question is, I think we asked this last time, is are you guys just going to be sticking to Steth for the long term, or will there be other LSDs that will be added to the like your reserve?
Crouger?
Oh, sure. The answer to that is definitely eyeing the expansion of the reserve to multiple LSDs. But we really, if anybody's been following the sort of the history of the development, the very first iteration of the white paper we wrote didn't touch LSDs at all. It was for pure ETH. And I know Sam, you and others had sort of said like, well, why the heck aren't you touching LSDs here? It just seems like a no-brainer. And the reasoning at the time was just, we wanted this to be hyper decentralized. We wanted to get every sort of nook and cranny of possible centralization risk out of it. We I say softened that stance a little bit because the product with staked ETH in the reserve was just too powerful, right? Like it just was too good with the rebalancing. But that having been said, we think a lot about risk, about centralization risk and stuff like that. And so as much as we are absolutely planning to expand the reserve to more than just staked ETH, it's not something we're going to do lightly. And so it's not something we're imminently rushing to do, but we're evaluating sort of all of our options there. And the long term is yes, but we're going to do it carefully.
Right. And then also last thing to talk about would be the token that's coming up apparently on 1 p.m. UTC. In just 1 week, actually, this time next week.
Yep.
It's going to be launching, right?
You got it.
You bet.
That's very cool. Well, anybody who wants to go check it out, you can go to fx.aladdin.club to go check out FX Protocol. And thank you both for coming on. And now we have 0xTutti from JPEG'd, who's also here to give some updates. So how's it going, Tutti?
Hey. Doing much better. I must say it was a very stressful summer for us, as we were quite impacted by the curve exploit. But the stress made us stronger, and we managed to recover most of the funds that were exploited. We also successfully redistributed them to all the holders, and we basically rebooted the protocol that was posed until then. So that's really, really awesome to hear, or to have done, basically. I must say, when it all started, I didn't expect we would get to those results, and it's really amazing that we have gotten them.
Yeah. So like, have you guys like fully relaunched now? Everything's back on track? TVL's grown again?
Yeah. So basically everything is back on track. What happened is the PETH was redistributed to all the different holders, the LPers, the one that were holding PETH, the one that were in the JPEG PETH pool. The vaults were reopened as well for borrowing. So now you can again borrow at a stable APR against PETH or ETH, or PUSD, and then you can always swap them in their new curve pool. This time it's a CRV wrapped ETH pool, so we avoid any of the possible exploit that was existing then. We also made sure that it's made with the new compiler as well, and it's the lightest version of the pool. And yeah, so we relaunched, and it was really nice to see that users still trust us as well. We have stable amount of positions. People are still borrowing both stables and PEs and basically leveraging up. And the Citadel was also relaunched. And in about 4 days, we had again around 5 million worth of deposits in the Citadel that is now earning 40% yield in ETH, which is pretty awesome considering that, yeah, NFTs are usually sitting in wallets doing nothing. And this is the opportunity for people to actually get yield on the value of their NFTs.
That's pretty cool. Sweet. So the Citadel is the it's auto compounding PUSD 3 CRV, right?
And no, the Citadel is auto compounding PETH wrapped ETH token. So basically, you get native ETH yield on the value of your NFTs.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And it's 14% right now. Wow.
Right now it's 14%. I mean, I'm hoping for it to go back up again as CRV goes back up again. But yeah, right now it's 14%.
Huh.
And yeah, and one thing that we also did, we also released a new UI that came also with UX improvements. So now it's all a bit friendlier, easier to use. Yeah.
Well, well, that's great that everything's back on track. I know that those weeks were all very stressful for everyone, and you know, it was really unfortunate how everything played out. But thankfully, I think like 70% of all the funds were recovered, and
more than that, actually.
I was talking about like the whole, like across all the exploits, right? Like it was really just the CRV which didn't come back, and
yeah.
One other thing, I think, yeah.
Well, it's quite impressive that it can happen now, but yeah, we got lucky, and at the same time we worked, really hard for that. I don't think anyone at the team slept much during those days.
So did you guys implement any other like security measures going forward? Like,
well, the thing is that this exploit happens on contracts that are completely outside of our control. So there's not much that we could have done, right? We already did the most that we could. We basically protected the protocol the most that we could as well. We didn't end up with too much bad debt. We didn't end up with any assets that got liquidated during that time. So yeah, actually everyone got out of this with the minimal damage, if you want.
That's really cool. On the like broader NFT market, things look like I mean, we're deep in NFT winter at the moment. I saw yesterday that the transaction volumes for NFTs have been pretty low comparatively, like even lower than the lowest that they were last year.
Yeah. So the market is it's the bear market. That's the true NFT bear market, I think, is there. But what we've been seeing is also that blue chips like punks have stayed stable. Miladies have dumped because of all the drama, but they did perform fantastically over summer until now. So there are still collections that are doing good, but generally it's gone down. I think also quite a lot of the big blur farmers burn themselves and probably have also stopped doing all the trading. But yeah, blue chips are still blue chips, and this is what we focus on.
So, like, what do you think is going to lead the like resurgence back for volumes?
A new NFT summer, perhaps more utility for NFTs, also interest in those blue chips, aside from the Bored Ape and the whole Yuga ecosystem. I think like punks are still very sought after. If you discuss with people, they're still assets that people really want to hold, and people holding them also don't really want to get rid of them. There was a zombie punk that recently got sold for 490 ETH, I think, last week. So there definitely still is a market for that. And then other than that, I must say I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know, but I truly believe in those blue chips assets. I don't see them going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, so just Zombie Punk 3609 was bought by the other day for 420 ETH or $684,000. So there is still demand in the market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could be, or the owner could be earning quite a lot of yield on JPEG if he was depositing his zombie. Actually, would be good for him.
How does that work? So if he had bought it and then added it to JPEG, like what? How can he earn?
So basically, what we have, we've introduced a system of traits multipliers. So if you have a rare NFTs, we actually value them above the floor, so they get a multiple above the floor that you can find in our docs. If my memory serves me well, I think zombies are 10 times floor or something like that. Oh. And that means that the user can come on JPEG, deposit their NFT, lock JPEG tokens again as well, corresponding to the value, the extra value that they're going to unlock. And then they can borrow as much as the value of their NFT. They extend their credit limit, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at the credit limits for the punks right now, and it looks like there's there's like 4 or 5 hoodie punks, which have, I believe, like 2x the floor, so they get like a 96p floor collateral value.
Yeah, around that. I think like hoodies are the ones that are the highest right now.
Yeah, 3x for the hoodies.
Yeah, it's 3x exactly. So they get 96.6p borrow power now, and they can borrow up to 70% of their loan to value.
And they are. I'm looking at. Let me pull this up again. Look at the. I mean, I'm guessing these are power users because all of their health factors are either risky or this guy's sitting at degen with his visor.
With his goggle, yeah. Yeah, what we've seen actually is that our users are pretty sticky. So once they come in, they really use the value of their NFTs to farm, and they manage their position extremely well. So they're really trying to extract the maximum value of their NFTs and keeping them at around 20% loan to value. So there's also like basically they would get liquidated if their loan to value ratio would get at 70%. If they would get liquidated if it goes at 70%, but they only actually get liquidated when it gets to, the liquidation happens when it's at 80%. So they have a bit of a buffer as well. So they can borrow up to 70%.
By the way, Tutti, maybe you can expand a bit about JPEG cards and maybe the SIG cards that give some kind of a twist on that LTV stuff. Yeah,
exactly. So if you're a large holder, you can also lock a JPEG SIG card, and that gives you an extra 10% LTV across all your positions. So you can obtain this boost by doing it individually by locking JPEG for one NFT. But if you're a large holder and you actually want to get even more or to get a bit of an extra security, then you can lock the JPEG SIG card, and then it goes for all your positions on JPEG, which makes it again ideal for large holders and farmers.
That's pretty cool. So like, what do you guys have coming next for JPEG? I know that the exploit probably threw development timelines up in the air, but now that everything's back on track.
Yeah, it did require all hands on deck to focus on that, but we were also working on this UI update. So this is one thing. There are a couple of extra UX improvements that we want to push as well. We're also still studying the NFT perp protocol and the pool lending service as well. So this is we're back at it. So now our focus is back on that now again after this. It did take us about a month to actually go through everything and recover as well, because it was pretty exhausting.
Yeah, it's understandable.
So, like, I feel like JPEG'd has a lot of competitors in the NFT-Fi space, but I feel like JPEG'd is sort of better equipped than most to ride out potentially a long bear market. Are there kind of big plans that you have for like new products to release, or are you more just like cocooning and just trying to wait out the competition?
Well, the ones that I mentioned are products that we're exploring, right? And we really hope to get them out. And there's also obviously the fact that we're in a very lucky position to be a project with a very big treasury. So we can actually ride the bear until the end and keep on building, keep on shipping new products, new services. If anything, I think this exploits basically taught us to be more careful with everything that we do, and also to really assess the risk that we expose the service and the holder's assets to, and as well the protocol's treasury too, because we want all token holders also to feel that we are defending that.
Well, very cool. Glad to see you guys back up on track, and good to see that things are going again. So we actually have just time for a couple more stories. The big news of the day is that PayPal has added their PYUSD stablecoin to Venmo, and so hopefully there's more liquidity coming for that on chain. I know that Kerr's been spinning up a bunch of pools for PYUSD, but it really hasn't taken off yet. And PYUSD probably needs more integrations.
Seriously, Venmo has added the PYUSD. What does it actually mean? Like, for example, now all Venmo users can send like mint PYUSD directly from their app. So how does it work?
Yeah. Essentially, like in the Venmo app now, you can like get or like probably deposit or take out PYUSD from your account balance.
And do they?
No, I'll try again at some point. I tried previously to be able to like buy PYUSD through their UI and send it, and I wasn't able to, and other people I talked to also had trouble doing it. So it's it's unclear whether it's as easy as they say.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just buggy at the beginning, no? Stuff like that.
It could well be.
Because I actually think it's a huge deal. Like, how many people use Venmo? Probably tens of millions, no?
Sure, but nobody's really using it yet. There's not a ton of liquidity for PYUSD on chain yet. So I think this is just all groundwork for something that could come on later. We do have some other like more winding down news. Fuji Finance has announced that they are closing. So they apparently were one of the first borrowing aggregators on Ethereum, and they are shutting down, winding down.
I feel bad. I'd never heard of it. What is it?
I think it's like cross-chain borrowing, but I don't know. I hadn't heard of it either. But apparently they're shutting down. They are going to be. You have until December 31st to withdraw all the funds from their UI, and then the UI will shut down. Then that's actually nice that they have the UIs running for another like 3 months before they actually, close the whole thing. Unlike the Nun bot yesterday, where they just like wiped the Telegram, wiped the Discord, shut down the website after an exploit. Did we talk about this yesterday? The Nun exploit? I think that'll be the last thing that we speak about if we haven't. Yeah, so Nun was a Discord trading bot that apparently was pretty popular. I hadn't heard of it, but I think I'd seen it in my Twitter timeline at some point. And apparently they suffered an exploit. They lost all the team tokens. A critical exploit led to the loss of the team tokens. And then they just nuked the whole thing. Apparently, the founder had claimed to be the son of a billionaire living in Dubai, and they were like, "Good luck, thank you very much. We'll see you later." Yeah, definitely felt like a rug. So I don't know. We'll see how this one plays out with law enforcement over the next few months. Yeah. Oh, DeFi Advisor, you're saying there's some good comments by Tay. Have there been any? Did ZachXBT or anybody look at this one?
I think it's. I meant the exploit one, like you referred when you said about the rug feeling.
Yeah. Notably, they made $670,000 just from the tax of their token, and then they just said goodbye.
Yeah, it's like a pop-up shop, you know, like a restaurant that pops up for a few weeks and then bye.
Yeah, very strange. You know, when Team tokens magically get exploited and then everything gets wiped, I mean, that's very, very questionable.
Not the first time, not the last time, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm sure ZachXBT might look into it, hopefully, or somebody else. Like, we'll see how this one plays out. Apparently, the guy was doxxed, so who knows? It's not a great look. The cops will definitely be coming to knock at your door.
Yeah, if anything, I've learned it's difficult to hide.
Yeah. Yeah, the only way to hide is to deploy and then go. Like the longer you stay around, the easier it is to find you. It doesn't take that much, you know. If you just deploy code and then never get, seen again, that's one way. But the more of a online trace that you have, you're going to give up your IP or address or something at some point, and then you're trackable. But that's for another day. I think we'll wrap up there. We're at the top of the hour. So everybody that came on, Kmets and Crouger and 0xTutti, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us. Had a great time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And this is all your guys' second time on. So we're going to have you back on in a few months to get further updates.
Absolutely.
With good news.
And every time I'm in.
All right. Garrett, DeFi Advisor, also great to see you.
You too, sir. It was great. Thanks a lot.
And everybody at home who's watching us or at work, you can go back to work now. You can find us on YouTube or Spotify, really anywhere that has podcasts, we are there. Also come to our Telegram channel, give us a follow, and also Twitter as well.
Come see us in New York.
Oh yeah,
20%
exactly.
of tickets already sold.
What's the date? What day is it? Let's remind the audience.
It is Wednesday of next week, which I believe would be 27th.
And where's the event exactly?
TBA.
You would have to subscribe to our Eventbrite and purchase a ticket in order to find out. Again, tickets are free.
Well, we will see everybody next week for the big meetup. And until then, we will see you tomorrow for the next stream.
Goodbye, folks.